Welcome to Synergy Bonus.
Bunch of guys like to sit around, talk about games, and drink heavily.
Not in that order.
And the heaviness of the drinking kind of depends on the game in question.
Indeed.
This time around, we have another entry from Winghorn Press in their Basic Rules Adventures for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Another one-shot for second-level characters. This one is titled The Horror at Havel's Cross.
Real quick, you said it's second-level adventures.
Yes.
Is this for D&D 5?
5th edition.
Yes, 5th edition
Okay.
they already covered.
Yep.
Second level would be actual second level, or they got a couple regular levels under their
Actual second level.
belt? Okay.
Basically, if you have just finished a most potent brew, you can pick right up here like a week later. Give them some downtime so that they can level up. Oh. Alright, this one is also by Richard Jensen Parks. I'm sorry I keep butchering your name, sir. You do fantastic work. This one was released on August 23rd of 2016. It is currently a platinum bestseller on the Dungeon Masters Guild, link down below. It is pay what you want, so, test it out. Throw them a couple bucks if you like it.
At the very least, give $1.
Give $1, take $1.
How much did you pay, out of curiosity?
$1. I think I threw him $2.50 for this one, because I was less sure about it than I was Most Potent Brew. It had much fewer reviews, and those were somewhat less glowing.
Is this longer than a Most Potent?
It is longer. There is some overworld travel encounters and so on. And the
Overworld, that always perks me up. We're outside of a dungeon.
Yep. And the dungeon itself is actually fairly short. There is a puzzle in it as well, like last time, about on par with the mosaic question. But let's start from the beginning. Actually, before we get that far, we're going to put up the warning for those who might be running this. Spoilers. DMs only past this point, unless you're the type of person who doesn't mind having the surprises ruined for you. So, now that we have the spoilers out of the way, this game is supposed to be standalone. I tied it in with a Most Potent Brew, having Glowkindle, the proprietor of the Wizard's Tower Brewing Company, send a letter of recommendation to his friend and sometime love interest, Winsome Landy, a professor at a local university. I'm using an Eberron setting, so it was more brave in my case, but, whatever works for your world. And she...
The University of Ludendorff in Lemordia.
Could work. Nothing wrong with that. And she's looking for some adventurers. There are other ways you could bring your characters in if they didn't do a Most Potent Brew, or if you don't want them to be hand-picked by Landy. They could, see it on a poster board, or a local bartender could point them in the right direction. One way or another.
Thomas McNabe over in the Old White Bear.
Absolutely. With a hearty tip to Lulubelle, but just the tip. Anyhow, they send you to the professor's way, and you meet up with her in a halfling bar, which, considering my group consists of multiple Dragonborn, was comedy gold, where there's a little bit of roleplay opportunity for you to talk to Landy, get the feel for the job, which is going to meet the rest of her excavation team, pick up some artifacts, and deliver them back to the university.
This can only end well.
Absolutely. And Landy is naive. I think she has a negative bonus on her wisdom score.
Oh, no.
And she's a professor, so more book smart than common street smart.
Oh, no.
She's also described as very bubbly and hyper and friendly, and she runs up and throws the friendliest looking at her PC into a giant hug, having just met them.
So basically a Warcraft gnome.
More or less. And she offers you the full reward up front.
Okay, my entire thoughts so far have been on this being the Lion's Den, whatever it is, and inn or whatever it is in Goldshire.
It's actually something like the Green Sprout.
Yeah, but the equivalency of the Lion, whatever.
Lion's Pride Inn.
Lion's Pride Inn, and it's just nothing good can come from
Nothing
this.
good can come of that gnome sitting over by the fire
Which is
reading an
hilarious.
oversized book.
I'm glad that you said that, because I had the Warcraft in music going in my...
You weren't on the same servers as I was, so going into that inn was not a good experience.
I know that.
That is Moonguard. We must never go there. But anyhow, so after you don't really negotiate, because she gives you the full reward up front on trusting on the honor system that you're good people who will in fact go and fetch the artifacts with her.
Wait, with her?
With her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. You're her, she's supposed to escort you because it's hard to find, and you really need to go with me so that we can get there together. You make your...
Like, there's part of me that goes, if we're playing in a system without an alignment setting, she just paid cash in front. Her corpse will be found in the side of the road in about a month.
Yep. Fortunately, my players aren't nearly that savvy or greedy, and the chaotic good bard is kind of keeping the Dragonborn mostly in check.
Lizard wizard?
Lizard wizard.
I'm gonna need more alcohol for this.
Probably.
Continue!
So there's a bit of an overworld journey, which they leave intentionally vague. The GM can put in some extra encounters if they want. I didn't because I was pressed for time. But it's a wonderful place for some bandits to happen, or some wolves, or what have you. You then arrive at the Inn of Havel's Cross. But as you get there, there's something awry. It's way too quiet for what's supposed to be a very busy traveler's inn on this misty moor. Oh boy. And
There's a gnome involved.
Yeah.
I have to drink.
There's the quiet buzzing of insects, and if you succeed on your perception check,
Silithids.
I
hope not.
A very bloodied corpse of a horse laying in the courtyard. So something is clearly awry. You also could notice with the high enough check that the front door is just swinging in the breeze.
Free drinks!
Again, it's a good thing Thrict was not in this group. So
I'm a little sad.
We both know that I actually play a completely different character from my actual personality.
it's true.
Very
true.
Again, I'm getting to that. I feel like this is something I would have enjoyed playing.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys want me to stop, we can.
No.
Okay.
Well, once again, we've already established I have no problem with spoilers.
It's true.
And if you were to just go swap the names, races, and all that stuff of characters, I wouldn't know jack. That's the one thing to remember. You can swap just about everything.
Yeah, it's a good thing to remember. So, the Bard is once again at the forefront. She's... While we haven't discussed terms like face, tank, DPS, and so on, she's very much become...
Which I hate forcing on a D&D group, but...
I know, but she's very much taken up that role. She's the leader de facto. And she takes Friend Rat, that you may recall from the last video, and asks him to go run reconnaissance up to the door on the idea that he's small and he can peek in, see what's in there, and...
get back without issue.
We're forgetting that this is a normal rat that she just happens to have speak with animals and be on good terms with. So his response was death. A lot of death. A whole bunch of death. A lot of death. Not going in there. Death.
So, someone threw one hell of a kegger in this tavern.
At this point, Lizard Wizard got bored.
Oh, joy.
It needs to be like a t-shirt or something at this
Lizard
point.
wizard got bored.
So, Lizard Wizard ran in, up to the front door, just burst in, ready to throw magic missiles at the first thing he saw. There's
so much wrong with that sentence.
Yeah. Well, Lizard Wizard hasn't gotten over the idea that he's a dragonborn, ergo he's a dragon, he's an invincible, primordial creature of chaos with wings and fire breath, and... No. He's a dragonborn, he's a wizard, he has a d6 hit die, he's squishy. But anyhow.
10-year-olds.
10-year-olds. 10-year-old with an attention disorder.
Obviously, because he got bored. Again.
The inn has just been completely ransacked. There's corpses everywhere, it reeks of death, and there are a pack of goblins and one hobgoblin just sort of looting the bodies.
So they just leveled up in Munchkin.
Yep. They kicked in the door, they searched the room, the monsters attacked.
Oh, I was going to go with loot the bodies.
Oh, yeah. So the goblins, seeing a lone adventurer who just charged in the door, with his best fortnight war cry, swarm. The hobgoblin hangs back, because I don't know if you guys have read the entry for hobgoblins in 5th edition.
They're actually tacticians, and they prefer to gain a bonus off other people being in melee.
Correct. If they have an ally in melee,
It's based off
they add like a d8.
It's based off the Forgotten Realms setup of hobgoblins where they're incredibly militaristic and tactically minded.
Yep.
Which is why I actually like them. I just never get to use for them because Forgotten Realms, and when am I allowed to play D&D?
So
soon, hopefully.
Lizard Wizard uses his surprise round to hold his action so that all the goblins can swarm up around him. Turns around, lifts his robes, lifts his tail, and drops Poison Cloud. Again, still arguing that Dragonborn don't have tails. I've given up this. I'm not going to die on this hill. I let him have it. To his credit, that D12 did a great deal of damage to all of the goblins. And they didn't really hit him that well. Because he had thought to cast his mage armor before running in. The hobgoblin with his longbow, with the bonus because of the goblins, dropped in one shot. At this point, the rest of the crew got in. Battle ensued.
Someone teabags Lizard Wizard.
His little brother, who then...
How did I know?
Yeah, who's actually playing the dual-wielding green Dragonborn fighter. Yeah, and he rolled an uncanny series of crits and high-scoring rolls, and just went crazy on the goblins while the ranger and the bard whittled down the hobgoblin. And there's a scripted surrender in here. If you get most of the goblins, or half the goblins, the hobgoblin will surrender and order the remaining goblins to surrender as well. Because he's supposed to be an info dump telling you what went on, and the fact that they didn't do this, they just happened across the place.
They were scavenging.
Scavenging, because they would never attack a fortified inn like this.
Because it's tactical suicide, you're going to lose too many people.
The guards are too strong, the walls are too thick. But this was a prime opportunity to get in.
That would involve the party leaving someone alive.
Yes, it would.
And a number of times where it's just like, this person was supposed to actually give you an exposition. This person was supposed to go and tell you this piece of information. This person actually was going to go and team up with you if you actually decided to switch sides.
And it wasn't so much Anakin Skywalker as it was, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. Just straight. Just split him like a dry piece of wood from crown to crotch.
The long way.
Yeah. Yeah.
10-year-olds.
10-year-olds. So, Landy is, of course, horrified not only at the scene of carnage within the inn, but at the violence that her new friends are capable of.
You paid for this violence.
Well, we already have established this woman has a negative on her wisdom save.
Yeah.
So, judgment on making friends. Not the best part.
So they spend some time going around the inn. Lizard Wizard is revived via healing spells and so on. Which was not probably the best use of healing magic this early in the game. Or session. And they went ahead and... the Dragonborn are barbarians, both of them, even though neither are playing that class, and just looted everybody they could get their hands on. The ranger took a more practical approach. He wanted to find out what was happening in the inn and what had happened previously. So Babar the Elephant Hunter rolled a bunch of survival checks.
Babar the Elephant Hunter.
Yeah.
Like, I put two and two together real quick, and I'm like, wait, did he just say that? And he did, and then, obviously, the Green Wiggly.
10-year-olds.
I hate my own kind.
Well, actually, he's a halfling, but otherwise you're not far off. He did a bunch of survival checks and was able to determine that, these guys weren't cut down by the goblins or anything. The goblins would have been telling the truth had they survived.
Insert info dump via...
Insert info dump by a random series of survival checks and medicine checks. They'd been clawed to death by something of medium size with a whole bunch of nasty bite marks and so on, except for one guard near the door who'd been clubbed to death by a large blunt object. The dragons continue looting and stealing everything that isn't nailed down. Meanwhile, the bard tries to console Landy, who's just having a breakdown, and suddenly realizes that she doesn't see any of her friends among the corpses, so maybe there's hope yet.
Or they got taken home to be a snack.
And so she wants to rush right out the door to go to the dig site. The other players, particularly the wizard, are like, nah, we've secured this, we should lock the door and take a long rest. Wizards.
He did one spell before going down?
Yeah.
Well, they got him back up during the fight, so he got a few others off, but yeah. Well, no, he did too. He had his mage armor and he had his poison cloud. But he's also level 2. He's got 4 spell slots.
Okay.
So, they managed to compromise and take a short rest. It's actually written right in the thing. If the players decide to take a long rest, Landy slips out in the middle of the night and gets in trouble.
That's cool. I like that.
That's okay. I didn't care for Miss Landy in elementary school.
Oh. You get out into the yard and you notice that there's a whole bunch of bloody drag marks leading in the direction of the excavation dig site.
Chugga, 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 chugga,
Chugga,
choo,
chugga,
choo.
choo. It's a level 2 adventure for new players. And I definitely get the feeling that these adventures were written from the golden age of this is how you get your players back on track. Forget sandboxy stuff.
What do we do if the players murdered the gnome right in the beginning, took our money, and then commandeered a pirate ship?
You're running a different
game. All right. So there's more opportunity for overworld adventures here, and I didn't really do that to them just because they were so beat up by the goblins and the hobgoblin the first time around.
Also, attention spans.
That too. 10-year-old attention span. So you get to the dig site, and it's an old elven temple with an Ouroboros just over the main door. It's a very flat, squat, ugly structure of stone, which makes me question why they would say it's an elven.
That's more dwarven.
Yeah, but it's like the lettering all over it is elven, and it's right in the text. This is a temple to an old elven death cult.
Yes, because the elves were known for their death cults.
Well, there's more to it than that. As you explore the 3 rooms upstairs, it's actually one about their cycle of reincarnation, which again is a lot more of that Forgotten Realms lore, where there's only X number of elven souls because somebody pissed off Corellian Lathan a long time ago and he's locked them out of elf heaven. So they just simply reincarnate over and over again. And this temple is kind of along those lines. You've got the room of birth, the room of death, and then life in the middle. And outside there's a whole bunch of trenches that have been dug, which are, excavation grid work and so on. It's really detailed about...
What type of trenches?
Yeah. It's really detailed about stuff that you could have a lot of fun with, but in the adventure as written doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. That's the problem with these low-level stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of box adventures.
Yep.
Well, especially for new players because they're not intending for out-of-the-box thinking.
Yeah. So, once again, they attempted to set the rat on a scouting mission, and he came back as unhelpful as ever.
Lots of death. Not going in there.
He didn't even come back. He started running back and then veered off into the bushes and hid. It was not a good time. So they sneak into the main hall, and it's just this big, empty space with rows of columns, and there's an altar at the far end, and a bunch of smashed up crates and so on, which were the artifacts you were supposed to escort back to the university. And then you have the choice of going left or right. From the left, you can hear a sound that's sort of like somebody clopping a spoon in wet oatmeal.
Let's split up, gang.
They did initially suggest that, and then they remembered that it didn't end well for them previously. 10-year-olds just watch that throbbing vein in your forehead. And they veer.
I can't. It's in my forehead.
And they veer to the left into the room of death. which is a big empty room that's was a place where they would take older and dying elves to ease them off of this mortal coil into,
It's a retirement home.
say, more like hospice.
Tomato.
Oh. Oh. And there's these two forms hunched over a third form, just sort of munching away, and
Ghouls.
yeah, it's exactly what's there. And of course, these are new players; they've never seen these things before. They don't know what's going on. So the bard tries to talk to him.
Excuse me, sir. Gore just dripping.
Yeah. That's excuse me, could you help us find our friends? And at this point, Babar
It should have been
is-
Mrs. Landy just to go and watch her get.
No, Babar's standing in the back restraining Landy from running in. Which is funny because, they're both halflings. Yeah. And so the predictable thing happens. The ghouls get up and do ghoul shit, basically launching an attack. And this is where that they learned the hard way that ghouls have a paralyzing touch.
Life lessons.
Paralyzed.
Well, it's been modified. It's not like ghoul touching the old thing where they just have to succeed in a touch attack. They actually have to. It actually is a case of anytime they make a successful claw attack, the
Ghoul touch effect goes.
the target has to make a save now instead.
Yeah. Where
Which-
it's no longer a special attack they can do.
Yeah. So they're going to town, and because they're undead and they have that sort of mild damage reduction, the only one who's really doing any damage is Lizard Wizard, and he's blowing all of his spells on this encounter. And because none of them had passed the passive perception check, eventually Landy lets out a scream to let him know that there's a third ghoul sneaking up on the ranged guys from behind from the other room across the way. Further combat ensues. And they learn to really...
Many ads. Deal with it.
Yeah, basically.
Handle it.
When the fighter finally gets a hit in, he dispatches ghouls pretty easily. Because he's got those big slashing, dual-wielding battle axes. Nobody else is very effective. The bard finally remembers that she has bardic inspiration.
Is this why the 3D printed bard tokens exist now?
Yes, it is why the 3D printed bard tokens exist.
No, they've come into use in the game for 30-year-olds, where it's like, oh shit, I have that. It's like, oh, that reminds me, I have guidance.
Yeah. I'm growing to really like props and stuff like that for those kinds of reminders for this very reason. And so they clear out all the ghouls upstairs and they spend some time exploring the upstairs portion of it. And there's a bunch of scattered stuff, some satchels with healing potions and gold coins in them as well. And a bunch of torn up notes and journal entries, very similar to what you did for us with Shadowrun, with the handouts, where they kind of put together the story that they'd been here and the team leader had been acting a little shady after they'd made some sort of a discovery involving the altar and a bunch of small bowls of various materials that they dug up out in the trenches out front.
Mummification ritual.
Not exactly.
Damn, that's where my thought went.
Yep. No, it has to do with the puzzle on the altar. If you get over there, there's some heavy-handed clues. There's the altar is circular with 3 depressions and a bit of writing going around it that is one long sentence that never ends. That life is the beginning, and then the middle, and the yada yada yada. And the indentations on the altar are just the right size as these 3 bowls that are on the floor next to the altar. One made of onyx, one made of gold, and one made of wood.
This was a puzzle in Resident Evil.
Yep.
3.
And you have to really investigate the bowls or find the box that got kicked behind the altar that has in it some rusty nails, some chicken bones, and a few eggs. And this time it was actually Lizard Wizard figured out the puzzle real fast, that you got to put the right thing in the right bowl, usually ground up or cracked open or whatever, to activate the secret.
Chicken bones at death, iron in the middle, egg in birth.
You think you swapped the iron and the eggs? No, you're right, because the blood was the life. Yep. Which causes the secret door behind the altar to swing open and get you to descend. And if at this point they've calmed down Landy enough that she can speak and she's identifying the ghouls as well and the bodies.
They were my friends.
Aside from the one body, which is a guard that got dragged here all the way from the inn, as the other team members and her friends and so on. And the only ones that are missing are the team leader, Calidor the elf, and Splatterbone, the dwarven guard who was initially hired to watch the site. And
Splatterbone will be an undead abomination bound to Calidor, who will be a psychotic, insane necromancer at this point.
Guess whose genre's heavy? So you descend down into the basement where the actual hidden cultist altar is, and you do find, you trip over Splatterbone's corpse, and again his skull has been bashed in by a blunt object. If you
Candlestick.
Yep. If you spend some time...
No, it was the wrench.
If you spend some time searching his body, he's actually got a ring on there that protects against psychic damage. This is mildly important later on. They didn't search the body. They just walked in because they...
And just went their merry way.
Yeah, they heard the sounds of somebody like hiding and cowering behind the altar. And that's where you find Calidor, the team leader, who is crouched down behind the altar, like clutching some artifacts to his chest and just clearly frightened out of his fucking mind. And he gets up and he starts, thanking them profusely for getting there to save him and, helping to escape and get escorted away from this hell house and so on. And he just straight up tells you that, Splatterbone went nuts and he murdered everybody and raised him as ghouls and was a crazy necromancer.
Sense motive check.
Fail. Natural 1.
Wow. This guy is obviously telling the truth and we should listen to everything he says.
Yep. But Babar did succeed on the perception check to notice that there was encrusted blood and gore in the elf's teeth. When he points this out to the rest of the party, Landy, so happy to see somebody she knows and cares for alive, has run up and is giving him a big hug and all that. He just grabs her by the back of her tunic, whips her around, and holds up this jagged shard of bone to her throat and starts giving ultimatums about how he's going to, he needs to be let go and they're going to let him go or he's just going to kill the girl and so on and such forth.
We do not negotiate with terrorists. Throw alchemist fire.
Well,
Roll for initiative.
We've already been paid. Do what you will. That'll be an alignment check.
yes, it is.
I'm chaotic neutral. I already agreed to help this lady. I also don't care if she dies.
I'm helping.
Yeah. So, at about this time, Splatterbone rises as another ghoul behind the party because they've all moved into the room. So they're pincered in between the necromancer and his newly risen ghoul.
Zergrush the mage. Deal with the ghoul.
All this is telling me is just anytime I encounter just a dead body on the ground, just break their fucking legs so they can only crawl at you.
Didn't Fallout 4 teach you anything? You see a ghoul corpse on the ground?
Double tap.
Shoot it in the head.
Yep.
Don't even get close. Just shoot it in the head.
Why are you breaking out the legs in case it rises?
Yep.
It's only going to crawl.
Yeah. So, combat ensues, and Lizard Wizard decides he's going to solo the Necromancer in a mage's duel while everybody else takes care of the ghoul because the ghouls upstairs had been such a bitch.
Harry Potter, you are not.
He
No.
actually held his own fairly well because he uses magic missile enough that he was kind of thinking, okay, it's another wizard. He's going to be doing what I do. Shield.
It's like, wait, you're dealing with a wizard who's being run by someone who understands how mages work.
And doesn't care about his undead minion. Fireball!
I can just raise him again.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I can raise all of you.
All of you. Well, I'll raise most of you. Some of you look tasty.
You're an elven cannibal, that's what I know.
You're an elf cannibal. And that's when they discover where that ring of protection from psychic damage would have come in handy. Because
My skull.
yeah, they down the ghoul pretty readily, but nobody's looting in the middle of combat. We're not that dumb. And they all converge on the necromancer, despite the hostage. Naturally, he clubs her in the back of the head the way he's been clubbing everybody else with the bone. Because it's also his implement for casting, so he doesn't want to get it jammed in her throat and get hung up there, and so on. And they find out that he has a bonus attack that is a rechargeable attack. Anytime you roll a 5 or a 6 and a d6, he can do it again and gets it as a free action, where he spreads out this psychic damage. It's something like 2d6 psychic damage.
At that level, that's actually nasty.
Yeah. By causing them to experience just these horrific visions of bloodlust and cannibalism and just ghoul stuff, basically, because this whole thing is ghoul themed. And there's a check to see if you go all Mount Blanc and kind of like it. And
I failed hardcore.
Blood-covered sock.
I gotta say, just Mont Blanc failed those rolls. I failed the rolls. I failed Mont Blanc. Period. I failed him.
the Dark Lord, Mont Blanc.
I'm fairly certain by the end he was the Dark Lord of that fucking ship, even though I was captain.
I'm sure he was, and I'm sure the ship was his domain, which is why we couldn't fucking get away from it.
Which is why it was perfectly acceptable when I had a cannon tower shoot the goddamn ship.
Yes. So they get around. I get a few rounds where I can't recharge the mental attack. With the mental AoE attack, it hits everything within 10 feet of him. And also, the ranger and the wizard decide, hey, backing up's a good idea. So they finally whittle him down, because he's got a crap ton of hit points. And he goes down.
Boss character.
And they're breathing a sigh of relief, and they're taking a second to, quaff potions, and Landy's talking to him, and some roleplay is happening, when suddenly, the bone he was holding glows, and he stands back up, now with undead traits, and full hit points and spell slots. Phase 2. So they go crazy, and this is where Lizard Wizard finds out what it means to run out of spell slots.
I'm gonna cast this. You can't.
You're done.
Mm-hmm. Can I restore spell slots by rolling a hit die?
No.
What do I have?
Nothing.
Your cantrips.
You've got your cantrips, which he kept doing because Magic Missile is a cantrip now. And you've got your melee weapons, because you do have simple weapon proficiency.
If you were smart, you had a crossbow.
He did, actually. Picked one up off the dead goblins. Didn't have a whole lot of ammunition, but whatever. And they whittled him down again. This time, they just kept pounding away at the body after he went down. After a couple of rounds, the bone glows and he stands back up.
Destroy the bone.
Lizard Wizard goes, oh! Attack the bone! And just launches several barrages of magic missile at the bone, finally cracking the damn thing. At this point, Calidor is still healthy enough and still has a spell slot left, so I use a Misty Step, and he makes his getaway up the stairs out the back. Recurring villain.
Who's technically now undead.
Oh yeah, he's undead. He's not exactly a ghoul, but he's close. He can't make ghouls naturally. He was raising them using the bone, because that's like the backstory. Is my big complaint about this adventure is that the real story is Calidor's story happening in the background, and you're just kind of cleaning up the mess. At the dig site, they discovered this bone, and it's actually the femur of the original ghoul himself. It's a Forgotten Realms thing, where like the first ghoul was a fallen elf who had gotten, but he's not like the ghoul god, yada yada yada. And this cursed femur of Dorison, I think is his name. Probably pronounced that terrible. Was corrupting Kalidor's mind because Kalidor goes into this chaotic good and comes out chaotic evil. After they'd found the dishes and found the secret chamber and the bone was sitting on the altar and he was examining it and studying it and accidentally attuned himself to it because it's a powerful magical object. It's the thing that allowed him to have that mental attack. It's the thing that allowed him to raise ghouls. It's the thing that
kept resurrecting
him as a quasi ghoul over and over again. It's a very powerful artifact, and it's like a masterwork club. It does like 2d8 physical.
Level 2 adventure.
Yeah, level 2 adventure. If you're not being a kind dungeon master, you're going to kill some characters.
Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah. And like after he'd stealthily murdered and turned all of the other workers at the place and clubbed Splatterbone to death because he found out that his mental attack wasn't working because Splatterbone has that ring of protection against psychic damage. So he just beat him to death with the bone.
I just heard Splatterbone and my thought goes, Rattlegore.
Yeah.
He's gonna be a bitch.
Yep. Well, he went down like a bitch, but that's because they focus fired him. Because what he's really supposed to do is like support, going around paralyzing people so that Kalidor can finish him off. He went and, under the guise of being just a regular researcher, went back to the inn and
murdered everyone.
Murked the fuck out of the door guard, then opened the door and let the ghouls in to murder everyone and feast.
That's beautiful.
And like all this is happening in the background,
and the players have no way of knowing any of this.
There's no way of knowing any of it. I mean, you could make some
apocryphal log or apocalyptic log stuff.
I was going to say some inquisitive roles, like if somebody's doing a Holmesian style investigator, then they could probably figure out a lot of this. We didn't have that character in the group.
Also, there's no rules for it in the module.
Not in the module, no. And again, it's basic rules, the free-to-download stuff from Wizard's website, which doesn't include Inquisitives and Artificers and stuff. That's all Eberron-specific kind of things. And, like, a lot of things, like, these are new characters. They're not going to know who Dorison is or, the King of Ghouls or any of that lore in the background. It's just, creepy shit happened. We killed some monsters. We get paid. And their next adventure is going to be taking the now very much shell-shocked Landy and the artifacts back to the university.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's good.
So ultimately, as a GM, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you rate running this? Not counting your group, just how the thing was set up.
I'm going to give it a solid 3.5.
It's presentable.
It's very presentable. It's a lot more work than a Most Potent Brew was. A Most Potent Brew is just like open the PDF and play. This one,
had a little more setup.
Had a little more going on with different locations. With the option of having overland travel encounters if you really wanted to wear your characters down. But given the difficulty of that final encounter, I don't necessarily know that that's a good idea.
However, if you got a group that's going through things like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, absolutely. Do that to lower them down.
I know.
And you could use Landy as more of a foil to drag them along as well than I did.
I know we said this was a level 2 adventure. What's the maximum characters that you can have?
Recommended for 4 to 6 characters.
4 to 6. Okay.
I've seen reviews where people have run this with 2 players, and I've seen reviews where people have run it with 8. And 8 just steamrolled through it. It wasn't strong enough without
2 must have been a struggle.
2 was a struggle.
Unless you got the very proper setup of a team that can deal with it.
Yeah. If you had like the right version of a paladin, a cleric, or something, because it just happens to be on.
They complement each other essentially.
No, it is something that I would recommend that you go and pick up if you just need a slight diversion or something to help introduce new characters. Again, as a follow-up to a Most Potent Brew, it works very well. But it does require a fair deal more work on the part of the DM to get everything done. Unlike a Most Potent Brew, there's a couple of different maps you could use. I had battle maps drawn up for the 2 floors of the of the temple and one for the interior of the inn for that combat sequence with the goblins and all.
Did they ever go to the Room of Life? Because you mentioned they went to the Room of Death.
They
and then
did. That's where they
Resurrection.
found all the journal entries. In
Oh, okay.
Or in the room of birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the excavation team had set up their camp and had all of their beds and stuff, and where they looted all of the stuff that was the ghouls' belongings. Again, much to Landy's horror.
Adventures.
I'm pretty sure once they get back to civilization, she's never speaking to them again. But we'll see. So
That sounds interesting.
it is interesting. It is fun. It was an option for an opportunity for a lot of handouts and like just hands-on stuff for the players to.
Could have been a lot of character development too.
Yeah, definitely. If with the roleplay opportunities as you're hanging around in the nice bar, and the short bar, and then again in the other bar there, and there could be other opportunities like had they let the hobgoblin live, there could have been a recurring character there, so on down the line.
All right.
So.
Any things you would have changed as the GM? Not counting your group specifically, because...
That's why I had to think for a minute.
Yeah. First of all, I'd eliminate Nova Coke as a thing.
Never. Yeah. I would have done something to account for groups that reacted the way you guys just did. We're just going to take the money and leave her high and dry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there needs to be some kind of...
Come on, take the money and run.
Yeah. Or groups that don't care when Landy gets taken hostage. I definitely would have given Landy more to do than just be sort of the driving force of, great, she ran off again. Do we let her go or do we fulfill our contract and save her ass?
How long would you say this was in comparison to like Most Potent Brew? Most Potent Brew seemed like it was really quick.
Most Potent Brew was...
This seems like something you could drag out for at least a couple sessions.
We dragged it out for 3 sessions, largely because getting 10-year-olds to sit down at a table for more than an hour is...
Trying.
It is stated right in the adventure itself that it's probably going to be about a 3.5-hour runtime.
So it could be
normal
a single session.
Single session.
Possibly 2.
Yeah. But like we stretched it
He
out.
got 3.
We stretched it out into 3, and the third session was entirely just the final boss combat with Calidor and Splatterbone. As well as some exposition, but
Okay.
about what the hell just happened.
Alright, so, yeah. Any final closing thoughts?
Not much that we haven't touched on already. It is one that I enjoyed running. It is one that I would like to run again, and not just because I spent all that time drawing those maps for the 10-year-olds. Because they're very visually oriented. The theater of the mind doesn't work with them. It is something that I wouldn't mind, running with our group sometime. I don't know that I could play it now because I know like the twists and turns in the backstory, but that's me.
If someone wouldn't switch things around on you, though...
Yeah, absolutely. Or if I was just playing a deliberately dumb character who wouldn't have the in-character intelligence to figure out the puzzles that I already know the answers to.
That would be a challenge, I think, though.
Mm-hmm.
To stop metagaming. Or to not metagame.
I'll have to
even
introduce
then...
you guys to Dench the Barbarian sometime.
Well, even then, there's still the whole thing of like, hey, I know this.
Does he know
X
it?
doesn't.
Nope, he doesn't.
Like, that's outside knowledge. So I'm going to go with this anyways.
Right.
Alright, we're running kind of long, so I think it's about time to close it up unless you guys have any other questions or thoughts.
I mean, it sounds great, honestly. It sounds like another nice intro.
Yeah, it is another one of those ones that has like the nice artwork version, and then there's the version that is printer friendly. I don't
Always appreciate those.
I do appreciate those. I don't particularly like that the printer friendly version is laid out in landscape.
Yeah, that's shitty.
That's a hallmark of Winghorn Press, unfortunately. It makes it really difficult to skim the PDF on your phone or on your computer, and kind of clunky to read after you printed it out.
That's unfortunate.
There have been some complaints about the whole adventure being done in inline text without having it, chopped up the way more traditional adventures are. Like if you looked at Saltmarsh or this on the Citadel or so on.
Or Weeby Goblins.
Where it's like, this is what's happening in this section and this is why that's relevant. It's not. It's just one long narrative with a few bolded words here and there broken up by scene with a couple of occasional sidebars that are usually stat blocks for items or monsters.
The polar opposite of a Shadowrun module.
Yeah. So it is something that you have to really familiarize yourself with before you even try running it, and take copious notes. I'm not kidding about Dungeon Master preparation. I had to pull this apart paragraph by paragraph to make sure I had all of the pertinent information and had all of the goodies and rewards and lootable stuff covered.
Okay. So I guess with that, good night.
Good gaming.